understanding the financial implications that you should be prepared for. Plus, we guide you through the importance of drafting a legal will. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
Black Friday is back at Dis-Chem. Now for 9 days. From Wednesday 22nd to Thursday 30th November. Make the most of big offers and huge savings. Act now and get a massive 30% off Maybelline Fit Me Matte Plus Poreless Foundations. And get a jaw-dropping 40% off Revlon Photo Ready Candid Foundations. Get down to Black Friday at Dis-Chem. Better health starts here.
RSB Barkane understand the value of 3 points, but Sekhukhune United are targeting the same prize. The Moroccans aim to exhilarate their fans with victory. Meanwhile, Babina Noku are on a mission to elaborate their main business. This is the CAF Confederation Cup. Catch RSB Barkane and Sekhukhune United this Sunday 26 November at 8:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 35 Rand from Hatfield to Centurion. Is for Ikoko who steady chill on neutral on a downhill just to save fuel. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 35 Rand from Hatfield to Centurion Station. Gautrain, for people on the move.
Rand Water is concerned about the significant increase of water consumption in its areas of supply. The increase in water consumption is putting severe strain on Rand Water's distribution network. To save water, please do not wash your cars with hose pipes. Use buckets. Water your garden with sprinklers between sunset and sunrise. Do not wash your pavements with hose pipes. Use brooms. Repair your leaking taps. Cover your swimming pools to avoid quick evaporation. Shower instead of bathing in a tub.
This message is sponsored by Rand Water in partnership with City of Joburg, City of Ekurhuleni, and City of Tshwane.
Second from the bottom, FC Köln confronts second from the top, Bayern München. The Billy Goats need a rapid plan to escape from the danger zone. Meanwhile, the Bavarians want to return to the summit. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch the spectacular encounter between FC Köln and Bayern München this Friday, 24 November at 9:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
In your headlines at 3:30, Minister of Electricity Dr. Hosian Tsuramukhupa says Stage 6 load shedding is an ordinary event. The minister was giving an update on the implementation of Stage 6 load shedding by the power utility Eskom. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the new Dr. Pixley Isakaseme Memorial Hospital in KwaMashu, Durban is a model of how the NHI would work. He was speaking at the opening of the 2.7 billion rand state-of-the-art hospital that will service 1.5 million people of Inanda, Ntuzuma, KwaMashu and other parts of the north of Durban. In a few hours, Hamas is expected to release hostages taken on the 7th of October when they launched the surprise attack on Israel. At the same time, Israel will release Palestinians, mostly women and children, from prisons. I'll have details on these and other stories at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Can only imagine what's happening on the roads with this load shedding. Good afternoon, Rob.
Yeah, it's busy with crash scenes as well and some roadworks around the place. We've got a collision on the busy Friday N1 North heading into Pretoria. It's just by Boerta Avenue in Centurion. That traffic's backlogged all the way through to the N1 Bruckfontein interchange already. Also a big queue heading out to Benoni and Boksburg with a smash on the N12 just around Jet Park Road. That traffic is back through Craft Road and back towards the Edenvale exit. If you don't fancy that, the R24 to the airport and then the R21 south to Boksburg will give you a nice little work around that scene. If you're leaving Pietermaritzburg on your way to Durban, stationary truck again in the roadworks at Linfield Park. That's pushing traffic back beyond Ashburton. And just while we're there, overnight tonight, the R103 will be closed from the N3 Ashburton through to Polly Short. So you'll have to take the N3 route. You won't be able to use that R103, closed from 8 p.m. For overnight roadworks until 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. Cape Town, very heavy on the N1. Driving into town, there's been a fatal pedestrian collision just by Marine Drive. That traffic is backlogged to the Coburg interchange. That's causing a real mess on the M5 and the Coburg Road, trying to get through the interchange and into the N1 inbound. And also very heavy backlogs through Somerset West. It's a really long queue today from Macassar right through to almost Gordons Bay, and then another big backlog coming over Sir Lowry's Pass on the N2 outbound towards Crabo. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkapele.
Good afternoon, Tumi.
Hi, Aldrin.
I don't know if the load shedding is affecting sports at all.
No.
Nothing now.
Nothing at all, but there's so much happening in the world of sports. A very good afternoon to you. And we start things off with rugby this hour, where several Springboks could be in action when the Chiefs and Blues travel to Japan in February for Super Rugby preparations games against top local teams. The Blues will play Cheslin Colby's new team, Suntory St. Goliath, in Tokyo on the 3rd of February. And the Chiefs take on the Wild Knights, who have Damian Dialendi on their books the next day in Saritama. Then the following weekend, the Kubota Spears Fenerbahce, who recently signed All Blacks hooker Dane Coles, host the Chiefs with Yokohama Cannon Eagles, who contract Springboks Faf de Klerk and Jesse Creel tackling the Bulls. In the meantime, Salvan Davids will lead the Springbok Sevens team for the 2024 HSBC Sevens Series, with Siviwe Soizwapi ruled out for the majority of the season due to a knee injury. The Sevens squad is for the Dubai Sevens, where they will face Samoa, Canada and New Zealand in Pool A. Then the Stormers are in action today against Cardiff Rugby in the United Rugby Championship. The team has won once against Benetton, with a draw on Leinster and a 2-point loss against Munster. And head coach John Dobson says that the team's performance has not been ideal and that they have to get better at their tackling kicking game. And that kickoff is around 9:35 this evening. In football, Richards Bay FC coach Kaitanu Tembu has urged his side to bury their goal-scoring chances as the Natal Rich Boys prepare to take on Orlando Pirates in the DStv Premiership at the Kingsway Tini Stadium tomorrow afternoon around 3:30 p.m. And they are amongst the worst performing teams in the league during the 2023-24 campaign and currently are sitting 15th spot on the table. Tembu's side accumulated just 9 points from 12 matches played so far, bagging 2 wins and 3 draws along the way. Elsewhere, Wales manager Rob Page believes that they have a great opportunity to reach the Euro 2024 after being handed 2 possible home ties in the qualification playoffs. Wales will welcome Finland to the Cardiff City Stadium on Thursday, the 21st of March, following yesterday's draw at UEFA headquarters in Switzerland. And victory in that single-leg semi-final would see the Dragons take on either Poland or Estonia at the same venue 5 days later, with a spot at next year's tournament. In cricket, Laura Fulvard has been appointed as permanent captain of the Proteas women, and this is ahead of the home series against Bangladesh. The 24-year-old comes on permanently, having been interim skipper for the away series in Pakistan and home matches against New Zealand. South Africa will play 3 T20s and 3 ODIs against Bangladesh, and it's starting in Benoni from the 3rd of December. And in terms of the team, Marizanne Cup has been rested, while Ayabonga Kaka and Chloe Tryron and Nadine de Klerk are also missing due to injury. Ending things off with tennis, Yannick Sinner says that he is embracing the pressure of the Davis Cup finals after pulling double duty to help former champions Italy defeat the Netherlands 2-1 and make the semi-finals for the second straight year. The world number 4 was a late pick for the doubles match and has not played alongside Sonego since their defeat at Indian Welsh in March, but the duo barely missed a beat to book a last four spot with Serbia up next on Saturday. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapel.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Get ready for an adventure of a lifetime with SABC TV Licenses Ultimate Competition. Feel the pulse-pounding excitement of a Bundesliga match live on an all-expenses-paid journey you'll never forget. Or embrace the rhythm of your dreams at the Coachella Music Festival. The choice is yours. A football fan's paradise or a music lover's haven. Simply pay your TV license, then head to www.winnerholidaywithsabctvlicenses.co.za for a chance to win big. And don't forget, there are incredible weekly prizes up for grabs too. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
So Sharon officing was telling me the way drip is so expensive these days. She's now waiting for her old clothes to come back into fashion. I say, Joza, while you're waiting, why not let your money do the things in a Netbank Just Invest account where you can get your money after 24 hours notice? Oganchani voiceman.
Injalo, Mabel. Earn up to 9% interest. Anyone can open an investment account via the Money app in under 2 minutes. See money differently. Netbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's on the interest rates apply.
The beauty, power, elegance, and speed of horse racing.
The passion at the heart of horse racing diligence.
Where these magnificent creatures and their skilled jockeys compete for glory.
Racing today.
Catch it live on Mondays to Fridays on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com.
Hashtag Horses of Great Character. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 21 minutes now before 4 o'clock. Coming up on the show in this hour, in the next short while, we'll be in conversation with the spokesperson for Hamas. That is Dr. Khalid Kadomi, who will be joining us in the next short while. And remember that today is the start of the 4-day truce between Israel as well as Hamas. At 10 to 4, we speak to Singabako Ngumalo, who's the spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services. Oscar Pistorius has been granted parole. He will be released in January. Of course, he's been convicted for the murder of his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp in 2013 on Valentine's Day. And then at 10 past 4 we speak to Foster Mohale, who's the spokesperson for the Department of Health. It is Black Friday, and the warning that's coming from the Department of Health is be wary of the food stuff that you are buying on Black Friday, and make sure that you look at the expiry date of the goods. And then at 20 past 4 we speak to Professor Ines Meyer, who is the chairperson of the Living Wage South Africa Network, who's calling for workers to be given a living wage. That conversation coming up at 20 past 4. So those are some of the conversations and stories that we have on the agenda on the show this afternoon. Anything else that you'd like to place in the agenda on 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. What do you make of the apology from the Electricity Minister, Hossein Zura-Mogopa, that he apologizes sincerely?
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
0614-104107 and your X at Aldrin Sampear. Today marks the beginning of the 4-day truce between Israel and Hamas. The temporary truce will see the first exchange of Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners. This is expected to occur in batches over the 4 days of the truce. However, the exact location of the exchange has not been made clear. For more details on this, let's now speak to Dr. Khalid Kadomi, who's the spokesperson for Hamas. Dr. Kadomi, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much
for having me with you.
Appreciate your time. It's been nearly 8 to 9 hours now since the start of the truce, around about 7 o'clock this morning. Has there been any developments from your knowledge at all with regards to the exchange of the prisoners as well as the hostages?
It was a great achievement for our people after the legendary steadfastness in this battle against the brutality of Israeli army to achieve this pause for entering humanitarian aid and to to shift the injured and to treat those who has been the victim of the Israeli offensive for the last 48 days over our people in Gaza. Yes, there was starting of entering the around about 200 trucks of the humanitarian aid, and there is an announcement by the Israeli side they will be getting their own citizens and treat them over 5 hospitals. But till the moment, I didn't receive any solid information about the starting of the swab. There will be also releasing of around about 39 Palestinian prisoners in the Israeli jail. But still, we are awaited for that time to happen. I think 4 days will not be enough, according to the evaluation of the international organizations, to do or alleviate part of the disaster which has been created by the Israeli side against our people. So we hope that we can do enough to step forward for the betterment of our people and for the betterment of the common man in the street.
Where is this exchange expected to happen? What's the modality around it? How will it happen? Is there going to be a meeting between Hamas and Israeli Defense Force? How's this all going to play out?
No. This will be handed over at the side of Rafah Gate, and that will be through the mediators, the Egyptian and the Qatari brothers, and on the other side of the Egyptian side of the Rafah Gate. And as it has happened before, also during the presence of some of the monitoring health organizations in the field.
So we understand that there are around 7,000 Palestinians who are in detention in Israel. Can you confirm to us how many hostages Hamas has in Gaza?
Well, there is no particular figure, but the list has been exchanged, and that will be coordinated through the mediators.
Okay, so can you confirm whether it is the 230 that has been reported on?
230?
230 hostages being held by Hamas?
Well, this, the official numbers has not been mentioned, but it was around the number which you have just mentioned. The official spokesperson of Al-Qassam Brigade of Ubaida has mentioned they are around about 200 plus.
So by the end of the 4-day truce,
But there are lists, over there, and that can be easily, public.
Sure. So by the end of the 4-day truce, how many Palestinians who are arrested in Israel do you expect to be handed over to Palestine, and how many hostages will be handed over to Israel?
We propose the formula of 1 to 3, especially for the civilians who will be exchanged. That is something different from the final swab about the prisoners who are in the Israeli jails and the military prisoners held by resistance personnel. For the time being, this formula of 1 to 3, we are talking about these 4 days. We are hoping that we can release the girls and the women who are the Palestinian girls and women who are held detained for many years in Israeli jail, along with them some of the kids who are below 19 years old also, in a total of 150. In exchange, around about 50 Israeli hostages from boys and girls.
Okay, so that means that Hamas will still hold on to just over 170 hostages. What's the intention of holding on to hostages who include women and children?
Come again, please.
I'm saying that if by the end of the 4 days you'll have the plus minus 50 hostages that are currently being held by Hamas being handed over to Israel, what's the intention behind keeping the 170 who also include women and children?
I was talking about the number of the children and women, Palestinian children and women who are held.
I'm speaking about the Israeli hostages.
I mean those figures which you have mentioned, they were mentioned about the Palestinian side. But for the Israeli side, I didn't mention any particular figure. But as I have said earlier in many interviews, that we don't have children over there, and we don't also delay that thing. But those children might be held by somebody else, not by Hamas. But again and again and again and again, emphasizing that it's only Israel who is postponing this. From the beginning of this confrontation, we have proposed that to swap the prisoners if Israeli were serious about the interests of their own nation, if the Israeli leaders were serious about returning of their people to their own families, they would have agreed from the beginning. And instead of attacking and bombarding the residential areas, the hospitals, the schools, the churches, the mosques, which is really something tantamount to ethnic cleansing and the massacre and war crimes against our people. The only one who is held responsible for the delaying of the returning of those prisoners, or as you call them, hostages or whatever, is the Israeli officials, unfortunately, who are again and again emphasizing that we are ready to do this thing from the beginning, in parts or in total. We were having no problem with that.
But Dr.
A very rational prerequisite. Yes.
Dr. Kadomi, as part of the agreement was that the women and children, Israeli women and children that are being held hostage by Hamas will be released. But now you say you don't have any women and children?
I'm saying held by resistance, not by Hamas only.
But does Hamas not have any women and children from Israel that it has held hostage?
No, we have women, but we don't have children. The Israelis, they have children below 18 years old in their jail. They have ladies who have been sentenced for the last 20 years in the jail. They have thousands of prisoners who are doctors, engineers, members of the parliament, media correspondents, philanthropists, social activists. 2,000 of them, they were held under administrative detention. They don't know why they are kept over there.
But the wording.
Let us not stick to the terminologies. What I'm saying that we have agreed to release women and children who are held by the resistance from the day one in this confrontation, but the Israelis are delaying this swap.
Okay. So you say the children are not being held by Hamas, but the children are held by resistance?
Yeah, by other groups maybe.
By other groups. Even though the agreement speaks about Hamas handing over women and children who've been held captive.
Yeah, we are responsible for the mediation, but it's like that.
All right. Just a quick update as well. Earlier on, there were reports on Al Jazeera that Israeli army has opened up fire on displaced Palestinians who were returning to the northern parts of Gaza. Can you confirm that?
Well, unfortunately, yes. And that is, again, it's not unpredicted. Unfortunately, Israel is always to violate the terms of the agreement since the last 5 confrontations since 2008 till moment. And unfortunately, the international community has to witness this thing. Second thing, we are reiterating that there is no reason can convince any side in the world that the civilian targets inside Gaza should be targeted unproportionate, or in this violent, barbaric way by the Israeli side. I mean, no one I have seen, including the Europeans and the Western sides, have not condemned those attacks. Even if there was no agreement, there should be no right for Israelis to target them.
Okay. Dr. Kadomi, in conclusion, since the 7 weeks rather, and since the 7th of October, does Hamas take any responsibility whatsoever for the close to 13,000 Palestinians that have been killed because of that retaliation from Israel? Because, as you've heard, the arguments that have been put forward by the West as well is that Israel has the right to defend itself.
This is very, very bad joke that Israel has right to defend themselves against what? Against what? The Israeli occupation is the biggest crime against our people. The only apartheid regime which has remained in this 21st century is Israel. Whatever we are doing in Flood of Al-Aqsa, or whatever action is being taken by our people in Gaza or in total Palestine, is a reaction against the biggest crime, that is the occupation crime. We are suffering the occupation for the last 75 years. And I have said it 100 times. We have only two ways. Either the diplomatic pressure and political solutions move forward to pressurize Israel to finish the occupation, or we are left with a compulsory track that has been granted by the international law for all those people who are living under occupation to defend themselves. We, the Palestinians, have the right to defend themselves against the occupying forces, against the Israeli occupying forces.
What happens after the 4-day truce comes to an end? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that after the 4 days come to an end, at least from the Israeli Defense Force side, they will go into Gaza and flush out Hamas.
I'll let them say whatever they want. We are waiting for them. Our Hamas fighters and the resistance movement, they already have destroyed their own military personnel. They have already destroyed any possibility that Netanyahu and these criminal generals in the Israeli army could have answered any question from their own society what they have done. In the beginning, they said that they want to destroy Hamas and destroy Gaza and destroy the Arab of Gaza in a very apartheid and racial discrimination language. And now they are saying that they want to make Hamas not powerful enough to threat Israel. Now, see, Netanyahu has to say something to save himself in front of his society, who are very much furious against his policies. And today, even the opinion shows that the Likud party, the governing party, the governing existing party, has lost all possibilities of the election, and then they moved forward to think of how they will behave in a Vinograd committee and how he will be facing the corruption cases in Israel, and how those generals and security agencies will face the exploitation of those holes in services, in security and in military setups. This is what Netanyahu has to think of. He should be occupied by the theory of moving him forward to the courts and to the courts of history, of course, before to the courts of so-called Israel.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Dr. Khalid Kadomi, who is the spokesperson for Hamas on the first day of the 4-day truce, where there will also be this exchange of prisoners as well as hostages. So hostages being held in Gaza and prisoners who've been arrested in Israel. So you just heard the explanation there as well, and also how Hamas is arguing they are not holding any children, even though the agreement says that as part of the agreement there must be the release of the children and women who are being held hostage by Hamas. 0614-104-107, and can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
Ford is turning 100, and there's never been a better time to buy a brand new Ford. We're giving away 100 vouchers worth an amazing 50,000 Rand each, and the sensational grand prize of us paying for one lucky winner's Ford. It's the celebration of the century. Visit a Ford dealer, buy a new Ford, and win. T&Cs apply.
It all comes together with a great partnership.
Thank you for demonstrating that indeed you are proudly South African.
Africa Borwa witnessed a great Rugby World Cup France 2023 because of your incredible support.
Great friends, great prize, and great sport.
Asibonge Casalaga. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Let's quickly speak to Singabakho Nxumalo, who's the spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services. So after serving close to 10 years for the 2013 murder of his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, Oscar Pistorius has been granted parole. However, he will only be released in January next year. According to the Department of Correctional Services, the parole placement decision was taken after having assessed Oscar Pistorius' profile and over material submitted for the purposes of the parole condition. Singabakho Nxumalo, the spokesperson of the Department of Correctional Services, now joining us on the line. Singabakho, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. So the release of Oscar Pistorius, and also on the other end you have the victim impact statement that was read out on behalf of June Steenkamp, the mother of Riva Steenkamp, and she says that as far as she's concerned, she doesn't believe that he's rehabilitated.
Very good afternoon, and thank you for having us. When an inmate is admitted in a correctional facility, there is an assessment process where out of that you then draw what we call a correctional sentence plan. That sentence plan will then give direction in terms of the rehabilitation chain of an inmate. Come the time when an inmate is to be assessed for parole consideration, that correctional sentence plan does play a critical role. But in addition to that, we have these assessment reports by specialists. We also have reports from your victim offender dialogue sessions and other materials that may be important in that regard. So the Department of Correctional Services will put everything together, trying to create a profile. We don't have an independent body, which is a parole board, which will then make a determination. This was designed in a way that you don't have correctional services as a player and a referee, in the same process, so that you can also deal with other matters that may have to say, but how sure are you? Hence, we utilize an independent structure to make that determination.
Okay, what happens now up until January, and after he has been released, what are some of the conditions that will be attached?
What will happen now, Oscar will be taken to what we call a pre-release program, just to prepare him mentally, psychologically, and otherwise. Also to make him understand that the life will never be the same. Other people will welcome him, others will look at him differently. And so he must be prepared for that, and that life will not be what he left before being incarcerated, and a whole lot of the things that will happen in that space. He will then be monitored, and we will have a correctional official monitoring him from Community Corrections up until the sentence expires, because parole placement does not mean that the sentence has ended. And what we will also find in that space is that if there are other programs that are to be undertaken, those will be done. It is all designed to assist an inmate to start living as a normal law-abiding citizen.
When does the sentence expire?
The sentence, I need to get that filed just to double-check. Those material I can only have them by next week.
Okay,
but
thank you.
What matters is that it has to be served until it expires in full.
Thank you so much for your time. Singabakho Nxumalo is the spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services. It's a minute after 4 o'clock. Time for the news with Lianda Maome. Good afternoon.
independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. In your top stories, an update provided as Eskom ramps up load shedding and 3 nurses suspended for alleged failures at the Gauteng hospital. This is SAFM News. A very good afternoon. Minister of Electricity Dr. Sampear says stage 6 load shedding is an ordinary event. The minister is giving an update on the implementation of stage 6 load shedding. This as most parts of the country are experiencing a heat wave. Sampear says a unit at Medupi Power Station has lost a few units.
We are measuring the trend line. The trend line still looks positive, and we intend to keep it at that. And also my visits at the various power stations illustrate the fact that the trend lines in some of these power stations continues to be up. And of course, we remain confident about the ability of us to resolve load shedding. But we think that in the next 2 weeks, we'll have an additional buffer. What is that additional buffer? We are expecting that Unit 2 of Kusile to come online by end of this month. We expect Unit 5 at Kusile to come by mid-December. Should be coming third week of December, should be coming online.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says the new Dr. Pixlika Isakaseme Memorial Hospital in KwaMashu, Durban, is a model of how the National Health Insurance would work. He was speaking at the opening of the 2.7 billion rand state-of-the-art hospital that will service 1.5 people of Inanda, Ntuzuma, KwaMashu, and other parts of the north of Durban. Ramaphosa says it brings world-class health care to people's doorsteps. He says primary health care outreach programs will help detect the growing number of non-communicable diseases at an early age.
This hospital is going to be addressing the growing burdens of diseases that are now prevalent in our country. Diseases such as non-communicable diseases, ezifana no diabetes, chronic liver diseases, respiratory diseases, cancer.
Meanwhile, the president says it is fitting that the new hospital be named after Dr. Pixlika Isakaseme, founder of the African Native National Congress, who led a life of service.
He was the top dreamer, not only in our country but on the continent. He was a committed Pan-Africanist and a humanist who famously spoke about a brighter day rising upon Africa, and an Africa whose sons and daughters who would one day walk in the light of progress, freedom and equality.
3 nurses at the Telemukherane Regional Hospital in Vosloorus on Gauteng's East Rand have been suspended pending investigations into their failure to provide adequate patient care to a minor. The mother of the minor laid numerous complaints about her child sitting on a bed with soiled linen. She subsequently took a video which she shared on numerous social media platforms. Gauteng Health spokesperson Motalatale Mudiba says the patient was moved to another ward where he is receiving the adequate care needed to improve his condition.
We want to apologize to the family of the minor and to the community at large for the lapse in service. This is totally against the oath of service taken by healthcare professionals, and it's also against Batupile principles. Unfortunately, this incident happens at the time where we just unveiled a provincial campaign called the I Serve with a Smile, which is aimed at precisely addressing this kind of lapses insofar as staff attitude is concerned.
In a few moments, Hamas is expected to release hostages taken on the 7th of October when the group launched a surprise attack on Israel. At the same time, Israel will release Palestinians, mostly women and children, from prisons. Hamas and Israel humanitarian pause was negotiated by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States of America. A former Israel Defense Force member who has an experience of hostage negotiations, Moti Crystal, told the SABC that this is a critical moment.
We expect within the next 3 hours a group of 13 kids and the mother to be handed over to the Red Cross in the southern part of Gaza, and then they will be handed over to the Israeli military at the Palestinian-Egyptian crossing point with the help and the facilitation of Egypt.
Meanwhile, there are concerns about what will happen once the truce ends after 4 days. Monte Cristal says Israel will continue with its operation to dismantle Hamas.
This is not truth. I think that we should not see it as a ceasefire, as a truth. Israel insists of consider it is a humanitarian pause for a humanitarian deal. From the Israel's perspective, this war will not over until Hamas military and governing capabilities, this terror regime, will be eradicated as a governing power in Gaza.
Recapping your top story, Minister of Electricity Dr. Hossein Tsuramokgopa says Stage 6 load shedding is an ordinary event. He was giving updates on the implementation of Stage 6 load shedding by Eskom. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 4:30.
In your sports this hour, Victor Williams to step down as CEO of NBA Africa, and Mamelodi Sundowns shift their focus to CAF Champions League. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, it's effectively a pay weekend. You can see that straight away on the road. Just some really big pressure through Pretoria. There's a crash at Buerta Avenue. There's roadworks at Rigel. And there's a crash at Linwood. That is a queue this afternoon from the N1 Brockfontein interchange all the way through to Linwood. Going south, there's a big lot of pressure as well from Linwood Road down to the R21 due to roadworks. Crash on Joburg's N1 south at Winnie Mandela. That traffic's already backed up to Buccleuch. A major backlog into a collision scene on the N12 east at Jet Park. The traffic there backing up to the R24, back to the airport exit. That's heavy if you're trying to get to Boksburg and Benoni. Big traffic on Durban's N2 from Queen Nandi Drive all the way through to 4-level interchange into Spaghetti. That has been jam-packed all day today. And Cape Town, if you're on the N1 inbound, 2 queues to work through. A crash before Sable Road. That's a big delay from Parow. And then a fatal pedestrian crash on the N1 inbound at Marine Drive. So that's your second big queue on your way to Cape Town from the Kuburg interchange area. And just a heads up, lots of traffic on the N2 out through Somerset West Gordons Bay, over Sir Lowry's Pass and into Grabo before you're out of it. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Buying a new TV? You'll need a paid-up TV license. Need to check your balance? No sweat at all. You just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 for fast, effective balance inquiries. Secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
The Northwest Provincial Legislature Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment and Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will conduct public hearings on Northwest Gambling Amendment Bill 2022 and Northwest Consumer Affairs Bill 2019 on 28 November 2023 at Barolombora Tlubakasitsiro Community Hall in Kunwana, Kakala Community Hall in New Doornstad, Kesmet Hall in Vryburg, and Moretele Community Hall in Moretele. All public hearings start at 10.
Nothing beats the exhilarating atmosphere of Joburg's hottest horse race. This is the People's Race. It's not just sport, it's a lifestyle with a great sense of fashion and a jubilant scene to party and celebrate. Experience the Summer Cup on Saturday, 25 November at 3:50 p.m. live on S3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
10 past 4.
10 past 4. Pop, pop.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
10 past 4, coming up on the show in this hour, we speak to Foster Mohale, who is the spokesperson for the Department of Health, on Black Friday deals or bargains, especially when it comes to food items and why you need to be wary. That conversation coming up in the next short while. Also, after that, we speak to Professor Ines Meyer, who's the chairperson of the Living Wage South African Network, and they are calling for employers to pay workers a living wage and not only what is prescribed in the national minimum wage legislation. That conversation coming up at around 4:20. And then at 4:45, we speak to the MEC of Finance in the Eastern Cape following the budget policy statement that was delivered. So he'll be joining us at 4:45. So those are some of the stories that we have on the agenda in this hour. 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi, Aldrin. This is Makonas from Johannesburg. Very interesting interview that you had with Khalid Kadomi, the spokesperson for Hamas. And very selfish approach from the leadership of Hamas as well, because you're asking very good questions. What are they taking responsibility of the death of the Palestinians that are dying? And he's forever blaming Israel. But on the other side, they've actually held other people from Israel hostage, and they've captured people that they are not ready to release. He's refusing that they're having children, but the agreement is that there are children that have been captured. So that's a selfish motive, and that is the reason why people are dying out there. But that's selfish motive of politicians. I'm sorry, but I think it is very selfish of them. While the civilians are dying, they are going on like this. Thanks, Aldrin, for a good show.
Hi, Adrian. It's Delari Gumede here in Durban. I really concur with the minister when he apologizes, because I remember one day or so, he was interviewed when he had a visit in one of the stations, saying that what if another lower or rather level of load stage of load shedding happen? What he will do if that happens? I think the minister was giving assurance again, but I understand why he apologized. I know it is an ANC government problem, or rather, you want to put it, it is an ANC problem. But for the fact of the matter, for the president, for the minister to come out clearly and apologize, it really makes sense of a good leadership to say that this is the problem that we are facing. But what astonishes me, I hear experts saying such a great variables. Are they not contributing? Are they not rather approaching the leadership that will include the minister with all their options, or are they saying that the government is tone deaf? Of which I don't believe it that way. But all in all, I'm really happy for the minister to come out and apologize for this particular crisis. I thank you, Edward.
#SAFMBTH.
It's 14 minutes after 4 o'clock. We're in conversation next with the spokesperson for the Department of Health, Foster Mohale. As shoppers take advantage of Black Friday specials over the next 5 days, the Department of Health has issued a warning to consumers to check the expiry date for essential food items. The department has also outlined the importance of consumers to report any retailer who are selling suspicious goods, particularly highly perishable goods, to the relevant authorities. Foster Mohale now joining us on the line. Foster, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. Why has the department issued this warning? What is it that you've seen during the previous Black Friday deals?
Good afternoon to you, Aldrin, and good afternoon to your listeners, and thanks for this opportunity. In fact, our alert is not directly linked to Black Friday per se, but as you know that in the past few months, we have been battling the sporadic cases of food poisoning. Some of this food were found to be counterfeit, others found to be expired food. So, as you know that during the Black Friday, people they try to take this opportunity because they are going to make savings out of the deals. But people have got little time to check the kind of food that they buy in terms of the quality, in terms of the expiry date, in terms of the labeling. So people may end up buying counterfeit and expired food precisely because it's affordable, precisely because it's cheap. So they end up compromising the quality and safety of food over the quantity and the savings. So hence we felt that as the department, we need to caution the consumers to say, as we'll be going to food outlets, the retailers to buy food in bulk that could not afford precisely because of the current economic situation. We say, please try to know what you buy, check what you buy before you buy. Otherwise, you'll end up filling the entire trolley, the entire basket with the food which is about to expire, with food which is counterfeit.
Okay, and though with the other Black Fridays before, has the department ever noticed anything suspicious?
No, not really, but
not really. Okay.
This is based on the recent cases of food poisoning, expired food, counterfeit food that were confiscated by police and they're working closely with the health inspector. So we felt that we need to warn the consumers to say people, because the retailers might take this opportunity to end up selling food which is supposed to be off shelf because they've expired. Others may take a chance to produce counterfeit food because people want to just to buy for the sake of buying or for the sake of taking advantage of discount instead of checking. They've got little time to check the safety and the expiry date on the food that they are buying.
Okay. Then the other part is looking at the number of reports in relation to expired food that is being bought and also some of the food being poisonous and children, especially children, being falling sick rather. Has the department noted why there is an increase though in these particular reports? Is there any correlation at all between the high cost of food and these incidents of where people actually prefer to go and buy cheap food or food that is expired because they can't afford the high quality food?
Look, yeah, as you know that the counterfeiters, they use opportunity to replicate the quality food that they know that the consumers can hardly afford. So they try to produce something, a counterfeit, in order to make it accessible and affordable for consumers. Hence, we felt that, of course, in the previous cases, recent incidents, working closely with the police, we managed to confiscate a lot of counterfeit food, which are the replicas of quality food that they know that is not easy to buy in bulk. Hence, we felt that as much as we didn't warn or raise this caution last year, because we did not, by that time, we didn't experience a lot of cases of food poisoning. But now that we are still battling with the cases of food poisoning, we felt that the counterfeiters might use this opportunity again to replicate the quality food in order to make it more easily accessible and affordable to our consumers, which will put the health, will put more risk to the health of our people.
Yeah, but have you established whether there is any correlation between the high cost of food prices and why consumers would go for the low quality food and sometimes expired food as well?
Look, definitely there is a correlation between the price and the quality. Obviously, these counterfeiters, the reason why they are replicating this food is precisely because of that reason. They want to make profit at all costs by making sure that those who buy unsuspecting consumers, they can be able to afford this food, which may put their health at risk. So there is that correlation between the price and the quality.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Foster Mohale, who is the spokesperson for the Department of Health.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Join us on Afternoon Express Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3 as we discuss grieving and dealing with loss. We unpack everything from working through the grieving process to understanding the financial implications that you should be prepared for. Plus, we guide you through the importance of drafting a legal will. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
Second from the bottom, FC Köln confronts second from the top, Bayern München. The Billy Goats need a rapid plan to escape from the danger zone. Meanwhile, the Bavarians want to return to the summit. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch the spectacular encounter between FC Köln and Bayern München this Friday, 24 November at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Adrian, the Minister of Electricity, Mr. Hossein Soramakhuba, only last week he said we will never have those stages, the big stages, level 4, 6, and 8. We are going to mingle between 1, 2, 3. But today, talking another story. But you ask yourself, can we trust these people? The big answer is no. Not a single one from the ANC we should trust. Tagatayo Cape Town.
And let's go to East London. Joseph, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. How are you doing today?
Good. Welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for taking my call. Aldrin, this is the very first time that I'll ever, and probably the last one that I'll actually comment on the issue in the Middle East. And my biggest problem is this. You can take a perfectly good cause and make a mockery of it. Yeah. And that is the stature of politicians who take a side, number one, but who not only, take a side. The worst one is a politician that has a doctorate, to actually, make their contribution seem like they are the all-important contribution. What a lot of hogwash that this doctor that you've just spoken to about the exchange of the hostages. And I was really listening enthusiastically to hear that the ordinary people, women and children, are going to be set free. And he comes in and tries to appeal to the emotion with things that you can hear that he doesn't have interest in the fact of the matter, which is that ordinary citizens should not be suffered. No one should be suffered, whether Palestine or Israeli. And now you ask a simple question, and he goes and say, no, they are taken by resistance. And yet you have a statement that talks about the exchange between the two, warring,
factions.
Stances, exactly. And he just comes and makes it like, and you can hear that he's not here to talk about this transaction with the genuine, expression of what the status quo is. So that we are listening, we want to support and see what we can do to actually help the situation there, so that the people can be the women and children in particular. But when a person comes and tries to sell one side, that no, these ones and whatnot, I really felt very much insulted. And I think this is lastly, Aldrin, this is actually the problem. Whilst we are busy taking sides between, which one is more wrong than the other, or which lives are more important than the other, the people are dying, and we are all at Mora for taking sides. Life is important. It doesn't matter what side. Thank you, Aldrin.
Thank you so much. That is Joseph there joining us from East London. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It's 25 minutes after 4 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Professor Ines Meyer, who is the chairperson of the Living Wage South African Network. So the Living Wage South African Network is calling for employers to pay workers a living wage, and not only what is prescribed in the national minimum wage legislation. At the moment, the minimum wage is sitting at around 25 Rand 42 cents an hour, and the take home that is just over 4,000 Rand. Our next guest has done research around what an optimal living wage looks like given the current economic conditions and the qualitative implications poor wages has on the quality of life for ordinary South Africans. Professor Meyer now joining us on the line. Professor Meyer, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. I remember when the minimum wage was being negotiated and the Deputy President at the time, Cyril Ramaphosa, was leading the process, and he said that what we would love is to have a living wage. However, though, we can't afford a living wage, and I guess the employers can't afford a living wage. And many years later on, you have done research that looked into the impact of having only a minimum wage and how that is compromising the quality of life of people. But where do we strike the balance?
Good afternoon. That is a very good question. And I think what is really important here is to say that as members of the Living Wage South Africa network, which really brings together anyone working on living wages in South Africa, what we are saying is that let's not get fixated on an amount, but let's see living wages as an approach. And what stands behind it really is, do we enable those who work for us a life with dignity? And I think that is the main question, rather than what's the amount. And so I think that should be the starting point, and that can then strike the balance if we ask, are we enabling everyone to live a dignified life, which is a humble but a decent life, or do we trap people in poverty? And so that was also the starting question from what we looked at. And of course, it's not possible for every employer to pay what we suggest would be a living wage based on our research. But I think those employers who immediately jump to the answer, it's not possible, haven't really engaged with the question, what does it mean if I pay my employees X amount? Does it mean I'm enabling them to live a decent life, or do I keep them and their family in poverty?
And I wonder then, considering how far we've come with the minimum wage, the value of that particular salary or income that the person has and the value of the rand, of what they were able to buy back in 2013, back in 2014, compared to what they're able to buy now, if the value of that wage has actually depleted or decreased.
Yeah, so the national minimum wage came into effect in 2018, so it is not that long ago, and there have been adjustments for inflation, which is why we're now at the 25 rand and a few cents that we are at. But you're quite right, because even inflation-based increases to the national minimum wage are not sufficient, because what we include in determining inflation, so the consumer price index, includes items that those that earn at the very low end of the income spectrum wouldn't afford, wouldn't have, such as things like home loans, and interest rate on that tends to be lower than on items such as maize meal or sunflower oil. So the actual inflation is much higher than the provided official inflation figures, for one, and then you're quite right that the increases to the national minimum wage haven't kept up with inflation.
Yeah. In conclusion, the proposal that you have is around 12,000 to 15,000 rand. I don't see employers agreeing to this particular amount during the negotiations. But what are the other interventions that are there, possible other interventions? We also saw a report that looked into how South Africans who are starving, the rate of South Africans who are starving are increasing, and around 4.5 or 4.8 million children in South Africa are also starving. Are there not other interventions that are not related to salary that we can at least help these people who are suffering?
Yes, there are a number of initiatives, like the basic income grant, which the 350 rand support grant that was implemented during the COVID times is kind of leaning towards, but obviously that is too late for it. But even when living wages, the idea was introduced, and it has become a human right in 1948, it was said that it needs to be supported by other social support interventions. And so you're quite right, there have to be other interventions from government perspective, but also obviously from private employers. And I think we haven't considered the full range of what could happen if employers started aspiring towards paying living wages, such as that the consumer base would become greater, there'd be more taxes coming into the system. So it actually stimulates the economy. And I would, for now, really appeal to employers to ask the question, how can we make it possible or work towards it, rather than to immediately shut down the debate by saying, oh, it is not affordable.
Thank you so much for your time, Professor Ines Meyer, the chairperson of the Living Wage South Africa Network. It's a minute after 4:30. Time for the news headlines with Leanda Maume.
Thank you, Aldrin. In your headlines, the family of slain model Riva Steenkamp has welcomed the parole conditions imposed on her murderer and former boyfriend, Oscar Pistorius. The former Paralympian athlete was granted parole today and is set to be released in January. Minister of Electricity, Dr. Hosien Tsuramokgopa, says Stage 6 load shedding is an ordinary event. The minister, together with Eskom executive, were giving an update on the implementation of the Stage 6 rolling blackouts. And in a few moments, Hamas is expected to release hostages taken on the 7th of October when the group launched a surprise attack on Israel. At the same time, Israel will release Palestinians, mostly women and children, from their prisons. Details on these and other stories at 5 with Greg Hose for SAFM News. My name is Leanda Maume, and I'm out.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's big traffic on the... Yep, big traffic on the M1 through Pretoria this afternoon. It's a pay weekend, plus there's a crash at Boerta Avenue and some roadworks at Rigel, so from Brockfontein all the way through to the N4 Emmerich Flenny split. It is very slow. Pretty dire on the southbound side as well, coming from Linwood Road down to the double lane closure at the R21. Absolutely dreadful conditions across the East Rand this afternoon. A Bucky's overturned, losing its load of paint on the N12 East at Jet Park. That's a really big queue from the R24 split. Big queues out towards Boksburg and Benoni. It's not going to help to take the R24 as an alternative route because there's a breakdown at Barber Road. That's heavy from the N12. And then there's a crash on the R24 coming onto the N12 and a crash on the N12 coming into Giluli. So just multiple routes jamming heavily in that sort of Eden Vale area to and from the Giluli interchange. Also a crash bottom of the N1 Midrand at Buccleuch. That traffic backing through Allendale and back towards LaRue Avenue Bridge. A broken down vehicle on your way to Pietermaritzburg at Umlas Road, jam-packed from Camperdown as you line up to get past that. And a lot of traffic on Cape Town's N1 inbound, a crash before Sable Road and then a fatal pedestrian crash before Marine Drive. So 2 queues to work through. And then big traffic on the N2 into Somerset West out towards Gordons Bay. Over Shalari's Pass into Crabo is your 3rd queue. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
In your sports this hour, starting off with basketball news, NBA Deputy Commissioner and Chief Operating Officer Mark Tatum has announced that Victor Williams will step down as CEO of NBA Africa at the end of December. Williams, who has overseen the NBA's operations in Africa since 2020, is leaving his position to pursue other business interests. And during his tenure, Williams grew the NBA's business and presence across the continent by launching NBA Africa as a standalone entity with the support of strategic investors and partners. In football, Mamelodi Sundowns will be looking to replicate their performance in the African Football League during the upcoming CAF Champions League group stages this season. A second star is what they're eyeing, and the Brazilians take on FC Nouadhibou of Mauritania in the initial match of the competition on Sunday. The outfit from Mauritania do not have a big profile as big as the Brazilians in Africa, and are expected to go into the clash as underdogs. But Hlompo Kekana says that this is not the Sundowns' mindset.
I think we all know how the Champions League is like, very competitive, very tough, and this is also a tough team. We know that they have a few players in the Mauritania national team, so we expect the quality to be very high. We expect it to be physical, just like most African teams. Yeah, but it should be a good game, one that we'll prepare for and one that we'll certainly be ready for.
Then Kaizer Chiefs legend Brian Spider-Man Baloyi has raised doubts about the dedication of goalkeeper Itumeleng Khune to the club, despite Khune's recent statement expressing his intention to extend his playing career beyond the upcoming season. Baloyi says that Khune needs to make significant sacrifices in his life if he truly wants to continue representing the club. Baloyi emphasized that Khune should either step up, lead by example, and improve his performance, or consider retiring from goalkeeper duties.
Him wanting to play, still play. I still want to play. Everybody still wants to play. But to us, it's just talking. So to him, I'm saying, if he wants to play, he must show on the field. And showing on the field, it's not only him playing. Whether he's playing or not, he needs to be honest with himself. I don't want to talk about the weight issue, but still, even today, when you see him play, you can still he's carrying a little bit more weight. And unfortunately, to be goalkeeper, to play in your 30s, I played until I was 37. At 36 years old, I was the fittest I've ever been in my life. I made the Confed Cup squad.
In cricket, Laura Fulvart has been appointed as permanent captain of the Proteas women ahead of the home series against Bangladesh. The 24-year-old comes on permanently, having been interim skipper for the away series in Pakistan and home matches against New Zealand. SA will play 3 T20s and 3 ODIs against Bangladesh, and it's starting in Benoni from the 3rd of December. Marizan Cup has been rested with Ayabonga Kaka and Chloe Tryon and Dean de Klerk also missing due to injury. In rugby, the Bulls will be without Marcel Coetzee when they go into their crucial home clash with the high-flying Connacht in Pretoria. Coetzee is suspended for the incident that saw him red-carded last week, and he will also miss the following URC game, the Bulls' first big derby of the season, and the opening game of the South African Shield against the Hollywood Bets Sharks, as well as their opening Heineken Champions Cup clash with the Saracens at Loftus. Ending things off with motorsport, Francesco Bagnaia is on the brink of becoming just the 3rd rider to claim back-to-back MotoGP titles, but the Italian says that there is no chance of him celebrating too soon, with everything still to play for in the final race weekend of the season. The Ducati rider holds a 21-point lead over Jorge Martin ahead of the season finale at Valencia, where he can seal the championship as early as tomorrow by scoring at least 4 points more than Martin. Only Valentino Rossi and Marc Marquez have won consecutive titles, with Bagnaia loving to join them, and he says that his focus must be on racing. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapel.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Open the Absa Cash Invest Tracker account and earn the best rates in the market, more than the top 10 money market funds' average returns. Enjoy unmatched advantages at an interest rate of 8.9% per annum. Plus, if you open your account today, you could win your share of 15 million rand in luxury travel experiences for 2. Yes, you heard right. A trip for you and your partner. My bank does that. Open yours today in less than 5 minutes on the banking app, at your nearest Absa branch, or consult your private banker or call 0860 111 515. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
The beauty, power, elegance and speed of horse racing.
The passion at the heart of horse racing diligence.
Where these magnificent creatures and their skilled jockeys compete for glory.
Racing today.
Catch it live on Mondays to Fridays on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com.
#Horses of Great Character. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for a market update with Paswana Mpatlele, who's a senior portfolio manager at the Markwe Fund Managers. Paswana, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Let's look at international markets and also local markets, and what are the commodities looking like?
Happy Friday, Aldrin. We kick off looking at the JC. We're basically going to close 2% higher for the week, supported by further gains today. And this is where investors were just seeing positive news, nothing unexpected here. They were happy to see a weaker oil price there. They are happy with what everything according to central banks is expected. Economic data with reference to inflation seems in line. And when you consider the fact that Hamas is even releasing the first group out from the truce agreement, everything seems positive. We can't take a lot into it, especially when coming to the trading numbers, because there's still liquidity, especially with the US. We're seeing some of the traders have taken holiday, extended their holiday from Thanksgiving. But just looking at the US yields, there's just unchanged, especially the long term. While the 2 years seems remains a slight bearish, especially because it indicates that there is no rate hike in sight, which is a positive. Meanwhile, the German economy has contracted down 0.1 in quarter three, reversing the gains they saw in the previous month. And this was pressured by the weak consumer spending as high interest rates and inflation eating into consumer spending, but a positive investment number there that grew up. While we were looking, and while businesses have actually become even less pessimistic about the economy, which is a positive. While Nigeria, the GDP continues to grow solidly in Q3, up 2.5% thanks to non-oil sectors having to perform well. While the oil sector, the dominant one, it contracted slightly, down just about 0.8% to the contribution. Looking at the big numbers here, we see a US market that is open flat, but on the positive. Europe is mixed with the CAC index up 0.2, but the FTSE down 0.2. Locally, we are up 0.2, supported by our financials up 1.2, while our industrials and resources were down slightly 0.1. The gold price hits back on that 2000 psychological level, up 0.3. Platinum was at $915 an ounce, flat, while oil was up 1.4% at $81.20 a barrel. Looking at the rand, relatively weak against major currencies. The rand against the dollar is at 18 rand 93 cents. Rand against the euro is at 20 rand 67 cents, and rand against the pound 23 rand and 82 cents.
Thank you so much. That is Paswan Mphahlele, who's a portfolio manager, senior portfolio manager at Makwe Fund Managers. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Okay, it's 17 minutes now before 5 o'clock, and as usual, round about this time, we build up to the bonding session. And today, our co-host, who is unfortunately joining us virtually, is Nonku Peche, who is the Chief Growth Officer at Discovery Health, and she joins us this afternoon virtually. Nonku, I'm really, really sad that you can't join us in studio.
I'm also so sad, Aldrin, but I must say I'm currently looking at the ocean. I'm in Durban for work, so I can't be too sad. But it is such a pleasure and a privilege to be in studio with you for the bonding session today.
So the levels, levels.
It is for work, though. It is for work.
It is for work. I love your job. I love your job. Speaking about your job, what do you do?
So, actually, I'm a woman in transition. Currently, though, I'm the Chief Growth Officer of Discovery Health. So probably for the last few years, my big sort of drive has been around how do we get healthcare to many more South Africans, private, quality, affordable healthcare, which has really been something close to my heart, having grown up sort of in townships, understanding the clinic system. I'm however in transition because I've now been appointed the CEO of Discovery Corporate and Employee Benefits, which is really a B2B vertical of our business.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And a particular interest in mental health?
Yeah, so a big part of what I do currently, and in fact will continue to do, is support employers and their employees around the issue of mental well-being through what we call Healthy Companies. So Healthy Companies is basically an employee assistance program. We make it available to employers and employers give it to their employees. And we really try to work hard, especially since the pandemic. We can see like a significant increase in issues of mental well-being, financial well-being, and actually all of that stuff, impacts you physically as well. So that's really the space in which we've supported people around these topics.
Yeah. And speaking about that, the Christmas season is coming up, or the festive season is coming up, and it is the season of giving. And from other people's, and also the season of spreading kindness, and even more kindness than you've spread throughout the year. Tell us about the topic and the question that you'd love our listeners to respond to just after 5 o'clock.
Yeah, brilliant. Aldrin, one of the things, and I wrote about this last year, is the fact that there's a tricky side to the silly season. For a lot of us, the silly season is about, family, friends, shopping, fun. But there's a huge amount of people that during this time struggle. There's been loss in their lives. Finances are not right. Relationships are in trouble. In fact, we see that in our data, that relationships in particular at this time struggle. And so there is, the topic of kindness and actually just being aware of your surroundings and the people in your lives that might not be in the same space. So really, the topic for today and for the bonding session is financial well-being and mental well-being during the season of giving.
Financial well-being and mental well-being during the season of giving. So Dumi's joining us in studio as well. So before we go to Dumi, I want to find out from your end why specifically this topic.
This topic is actually so pertinent right now. The world is a little bit upside down in so many ways. If it's not sort of the economic difficulties that people are looking at and dealing with, there are lots of sort of mental well-being issues of depression and hardness. So for me, it was about, can we think about how we think about our finances and support ourselves in the first place, but also how we look around ourselves, look at our friends who might have, as an example, experienced loss. Look at the people who, while we might be having, chicken and rice and 7 colors on Christmas Day, might not even have, a slice of bread to eat. So it's really about looking at finances and looking at emotional hardships during this time. And because it's a season of giving, thinking about what can we do? What kindness can we spread during this time?
Dumi just told me about her plans for Christmas. Dumi?
Yeah, a very interesting topic that we have, just thinking about those that are perhaps less fortunate to experience what Christmas is all about. But also, it's a responsibility on us, the ones that are financially okay, to ask yourself, how can I help the next person? So I have decided that every Christmas I'm going to go out to hospitals. I'm actually doing a toy drive and collecting toys to take to kids that are in hospital so that I can say Happy Christmas to them on Christmas Day. And the reason is because I experienced that side of things with my younger brother when he was sick. And I think it was 2.5, and we were in hospital during that period. And we didn't actually experience what Christmas is all about, because now you just focus on this kid who is fighting for his life. But besides that, it's like depressing. And I was just like, surely just that one day would go a long way to just put a smile on the kids' faces and the families, because usually they spend that Christmas with those kids at the hospital.
Well done. So proud of you.
I love that. Look at you.
I'm really proud of you. Well done. Well done. And I will be joining you certainly on that drive. Okay. So let's get as many toys as possible to children in hospital. But I have to say though, as Dumi was explaining the story also about the brother being in hospital, and you think about sometimes, so it is the festive season, right? And people are expected to be happy. Can I really expect of somebody to be in a festive mood when they have a difficult period that they are going through? Should I be more considerate, or do I then dampen down my festive spirit to try and be more accommodative to that person? And how fair is that on me?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, for me, the first place to start, Aldrin, is that, happiness and fun actually, from just the scientific perspective, right, releases endorphins and dopamine, which are the happy hormones, So, I mean, difficult thing to say. The first thing is, I guess, you must always be empathetic, understand where the person is and where they're coming from. But I would say, actually, if you could move past that and get the person to be in the groove with you,
yes,
maybe, endorphins and dopamine releases for them and sort of happiness is spread across. And it's an important thing to understand that actually for people, and this is what we've also learned, for people who are struggling during that time, they should actually actively plan. 1, to not be alone. 2, to be around positive people. 3, to plan things that are fun, even if it's small things that are fun. The ability to laugh, does something in your brain that positively impacts you and impacts your well-being. So get that person or those people that are in your life that are suffering or struggling, if you can, to a place of fun. That's a good place to start.
Thank you so much. That is Nonku Pije, who is the Chief Growth Officer at Discovery Health. And as you heard, she's a woman in transition. So that's the conversation that we're having just after 5 o'clock for the bonding session. I'd love to hear from you as well. And I was saying to Nonku that being somebody who lives in Johannesburg, specifically being a CBD, where most people would be coming from rural areas, and they find themselves in Johannesburg, and they don't really have close friends and rather close family, and the people in Joburg have now become their family members, and sometimes they find themselves being lonely. How do you bring that particular friend or that neighbor on board and say, let's go and be merry?
Would you bring someone into your house just for the day?
I certainly would. Actually, I was speaking to Bridget earlier on, and she told me about Amanda Utambuza, and how Amanda during one Christmas brought in a couple of people, strangers, into our house just to come and have a Christmas lunch.
Sure.
So I think that's something that I would certainly do, no doubt. But I'm definitely doing the toy drive. I love that. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
It's time for the most anticipated event of the year, the Crown Gospel Music Awards, 26 November at FNB Stadium in a breathtaking dome marquee. So, dress up and be prepared to walk the golden carpet. Lalela Levels. Tickets are at Ticket Pro and Spa. Check voting details on Crown social media pages. Hashtag a new season.
Second from the bottom, FC Köln confronts second from the top, Bayern München. The Billy Goats need a rapid plan to escape from the danger zone. Meanwhile, the Bavarians want to return to the summit. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch the spectacular encounter between FC Köln and Bayern München this Friday, 24 November at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
It is 6 minutes now before 5 o'clock, and we are going to move over now to this conversation where we look at the budget policy statement, the medium-term budget policy statement that was delivered by the MEC for Finance in the Eastern Cape, Mlungisi Mvoko, who announced that the conditional grant that has been reduced by 761 million rand from 14.6 billion rand's main budget for the 2023-2024 financial year. The adjustments have been attributed to the tough economic conditions and low revenue collection. He also revealed that the additional 2.3 billion rand of the equitable share will provide support to respond to the cost of implementing the public service wage agreement, which amounted to 3.6 billion rand for the current financial year. Joining us now is Phumelele Kotongwane, who's the spokesperson for the Eastern Cape Provincial Treasury. Phumelele, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. So a lot of emphasis, of course, around the tougher economic conditions, but are municipalities surviving?
Afternoon, Aldrin, and afternoon to your listeners.
Sure. Are the municipalities surviving in the province?
The municipalities, you ask?
Yes.
Look, Aldrin, this particular medium-term budget policy statement was for provincial government, which is inclusive of the provincial departments and also the public entities that are supported through some of the departments within the provincial space. But of course, as provincial treasury, we do give the support from a financial governance point of view to municipalities. But this particular medium-term budget policy statement was mainly to deal with the adjustments within the provincial government space.
And where are the most significant adjustments that have been made?
Look, in terms of the adjustments themselves, as you alluded in your intro, we've lost some money through the adjustments within the grants, codicil grants. But in as far as the provincial equitable share, we didn't lose any money, but also we didn't gain much. As such, we received about 87.5 million, which was mainly just to cover for the public sector wage agreement, which provincial departments were not had not budgeted for. So the little money that we received, the bulk of it went to cover that gap that was created by the public sector wage agreement.
And then considering the state of the economy, as we just discussed that a bit earlier on as well, considering the state of the economy that is not growing at the expected levels, what strategy has been proposed to grow the Eastern Cape economy?
Mainly, I think since the beginning of the current term of administration, the sixth administration, the emphasis and the focus for the province has been creating a conducive environment for investments in the province. And I think we've done fairly well up to this far. Listeners will remember that I think about September this year, Premier Mabuyane announced investments to the value of around 27 billion. Just for this year only, we've done similar investments in the past. So that has been the drive behind the economic recovery and growth within the province. So that's in the main what has been underpinning our economic growth recovery and also inspiring growth within the province. But also to support that, we are putting so much money into economic infrastructure as the provincial government, supported, of course, by national government and some of the public entities in the provincial and municipal space, in as far as your Sanral, who has put around 10 billion to either resurface some of our roads, upgrade or construct some of our key strategic roads within the province. And there are some projects that are ongoing, which really make our space conducive for investments. But also in the space of Transnet, there is about 9.1 billion that has been invested into the province by Transnet to expand our ports, give more capacity into our ports, because they become very strategic if we talk investments, if we talk movement of goods between us and other provinces, including regions within the Africa and also abroad. So that has been our pillar in as far as inspiring growth and economic recovery in the province.
So what happens now after the medium-term budget policy statement?
What we expect now, Aldrin, is that departments must accelerate service delivery as we push towards the end of the financial year. But we also now, as Provincial Treasury, working with departments, have started already working on the main budget, which is to be tabled next year in March from the province, which will be preceded by the national budget in February. So once that has happened at the national space, we'll come in as a province to deliver the main appropriation. But what we did now was just to set the tone for the actual main appropriation. So we expect now departments to accelerate service delivery, but also make sure that the money that we allocated to them is spent on programs that were meant for this money. We don't expect departments to return money to the national fiscus because you know that the province, such as the Eastern Cape, has a huge backlog in as far as the infrastructure and other services are concerned. So we're really appealing to provincial departments to work with us in making sure that we spend our money effectively and efficiently.
Thank you so much for your time. Phumelele Kodongwana is the spokesperson for the Department of Treasury in the Eastern Cape, and that conversation proudly brought to you by the Eastern Cape Provincial Treasury. It's a minute after 5 o'clock, time for the news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Israeli hostages released and minister speaks on stage 6 load shedding. Good day to you. Israeli hostages in Gaza have been transferred to the Red Cross and are on their way to the Rafah border crossing, where they'll be handed over to the Israeli military. These hostages were taken during the 7th of October surprise attack by Hamas on Israel. Meanwhile, Thailand's prime minister has reportedly confirmed that 12 Thai nationals held hostage by Hamas in Gaza have also been released. The release of these hostages is not part of the deal between Israel and Hamas that was brokered by Qatar. Israel will release Palestinians, mostly women and teenage boys, from prisons. The family of slain model Reva Steenkamp has welcomed the parole conditions imposed on her killer and former boyfriend Oscar Pistorius. The former athlete was granted parole today and is set to be released in January. Steenkamp's mother June, speaking through her lawyer Tanya Kuhn, says she's satisfied with the parole conditions imposed on Pistorius.
We are pleased with the conditions that the parole board has decided to impose because, especially in light of tomorrow being the first day of 16 days of activism, it's important that that perpetrators know that there will be consequences. The consequences here is that he must undergo anger management courses and secondly, courses on gender-based violence. And I think that sends out a good message to society.
The Electricity Minister, Hossein Suramakgopa, says Stage 6 load shedding is an ordinary event. The Minister, together with Eskom executives, gave an update on the implementation of Stage 6 rolling blackouts. This as most parts of the country are experiencing a heat wave. The Minister says the Madupi power station has lost a few units.
We are measuring the trend line. The trend line still looks positive and we intend to keep it at that. And also my visits at the various power stations illustrate the fact that the trend lines in some of these power stations continues to be up. And of course we remain confident about the ability of us to resolve load shedding. But we think that in the next 2 weeks we'll have an additional buffer. What is that additional buffer? We are expecting that Unit 2 of Kusile to come online by end of this month. We expect Unit 5 at Kusile to come by mid-December. Should be coming third week of December, should be coming online.
3 nurses of the Telemokwarani Regional Hospital in Fosterus, east of Johannesburg, have been suspended, pending a probe into their failure to provide adequate patient care to a minor. The mother of the minor laid numerous complaints about her child sitting on a bed with soiled linen. She subsequently took a video, which she shared on social media. Spokesperson for the Gauteng Health Department, Mutalatale Modiba.
We want to apologize to the family of the minor and to the community at large for the lapse in service. This is totally against the oath of service taken by healthcare professionals, and it's also against Batupile principles. Unfortunately, this incident happens at the time where we just unveiled a provincial campaign called the I Serve with a Smile, which is aimed at precisely addressing this kind of lapses insofar as staff attitude is concerned.
Online offers and extended Black Friday deals have led to less foot traffic in some stores at one of Cape Town's biggest shopping complexes. Many cash-strapped consumers say they're only buying what is needed.
My price of my groceries was 1,600, say 700, and the deductions is about 500 rand. So it's a very good price. Yeah.
Because it's Black Friday, we were here almost after 7 this morning because we know it's going to be a very much crowded, but it's nice.
Black Friday, certain items is on good special, so that's what we buy, foods especially. So yeah, that's about it.
Top story: Israeli hostages in Gaza have been transferred to the Red Cross and are on their way to the Rafah border crossing, where they'll be handed over to the Israeli military. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Alan Donald joins the Lions coaching staff. Mamelodi Sundowns sporting director says that there's more to come from the male and female side, and Victor Williams to step down as CEO of NBA Africa. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very busy on the N1 North around Pretoria from John Foster Drive right through to about Linwood Road. Just plenty of traffic disruption. Load shedding in the Claremont Boysons area of Pretoria. That takes the lights out on Bremer and Van der Hof, so the run through Dustport Tunnel is very heavy as well. A lot of traffic around four ways today. Winnie Mandela, I beg your pardon, Cedar Road, Vic Copper, just lots of congestion there. And if you're heading south from the Winnie Mandela off-ramp towards Malabongwe, there's a big backlog of traffic to get off at Malabongwe. That is some load shedding in the area, plus a collision on Malabongwe President Forshire. Big queues out towards the airport at Joburg, the R24 breakdown at Barbara Road. That traffic effectively queues from the N12 Galulis. Crash going out to Boksburg at Jet Park. That is heavy. Also a collision at Edenvale on your way into Joburg, causing a delay from Craft Road as well. Durban's N2 remains really jam-packed from Queen Nundy Drive all the way down through to Spaghetti Junction. There's queues going up through Mgeni Road towards Queen Nundy Drive as well. And if you're on your way to Pietermaritzburg, the breakdown around Umlas Road is being cleared. That traffic starting to move. Cape Town, very heavy. N1 into town today. A crash involving a pedestrian. Unfortunately, it's fatal. It's happened by the Marine Drive exit. Traffic's backed all the way through to Century City. Marine Drive coming through Pardon Island, jamming to get into the N1 as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
Catch the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6 as hip-hop star Kiddo CSA taps into the spirit of Africa.
So it's so inspirational.
Tenor Luvo Maranti and Lady Linda Davies join forces
to help young talents to be seen in the world.
And lending his bark to the campaign against bullying, canine celebrity Mr. Miyagi is a ferocious force for good. That's the Insider SA, Monday at 6. Repeat Saturday at 12 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10:30 on S3.
Nottingham Forest welcome their visitors, Brighton and Hove Albion, with warm hands, but insist the valuable 3 points will remain at City Ground.
And beats it first time, it's a brilliant goal! Elanga hits it.
However, the Seagulls are not willing to part ways with maximum points, as they prefer a position in the top half.
The dinger is in, what a run, what a goal!
This is the Premier League. Catch the glittering clash between Nottingham Forest and Brighton and Hove Albion on Saturday, 25 November at 4 p.m. live on S3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Bonding session. What's your relationship like with your domestic worker? I'd love to hear.
I've had a domestic worker that's an absolute angel. She's been with us for years. She's really old at the moment and runs the show. I have to listen to her. She doesn't like listening to me anymore.
Beyond the headline.
Money lending policy to friends.
If you ask me for a loan, I have 2 loans for you. Home alone and leave me alone.
Your experience with an ex and some of the craziest things that they've tried to do, especially to try and win your love back.
If we break up, I don't know you. We never met.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
It is 9 minutes after 5 o'clock and it's time for the bonding session. We're taking your calls on 086 000 2032, your voice notes on 0614 104 107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. So how are you spreading kindness during this festive season? And also, is it something that some people do intentionally, or is it just like, oh, by the way, I just saw this, so now I'm going to do it? Is it, do you go into planning mode? Like, for instance, now you just heard Dumi saying that she plans on going to hospitals to give children toys who will be in hospital during the Christmas season, which is of course an act of kindness. But there's also something else about the act of kindness that's very selfish about it, because there's just that feeling, man, that you get, and the endorphins that Nonku was speaking about earlier on. A level of satisfaction that you get out of spreading kindness. I'm one of those people who get that feeling, and sometimes I find myself actually chasing that feeling. And Nonku, sometimes what does happen is, as you were saying, that you need to also take into consideration your financial well-being, is that I would spread my kindness so far that sometimes I make irresponsible financial decisions.
And then January catches you, Aldrin.
Yes, and then January catches me, It is time for the bonding session. We're taking your calls on 086 000 2032, your voice notes on 0614 104 107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. My co-host this afternoon is Nonku Beje, who is who's a Chief Growth Officer at Discovery Health, but as she indicated that she is a woman in transition. Just a quick reminder once again, Nonku, around the conversation that we want to have with the audience this afternoon.
Awesome. The conversation is around financial well-being and mental well-being during the season of giving. And the focus is on the fact that this is a season of giving. And so what can we do in this time in terms of our finances and our well-being, and the finances and the well-being of those we love or care about, or those that we see around us?
When we speak about the finances of others, does that mean me having a conversation with a relative to say, I think right now you are overspending, or you're indulging a bit too much? Does the conversation go as far, or does it just end with me?
Yeah, the truth is it's a difficult one, right, Aldrin? But for me, very simply, is that we have to go back to the basics. This sort of festive season and Christmas time has always been about family and about giving. And what we've made it about is not what it's traditionally about. So in the first instance, I would say, in terms of going back to basics, is how are we responsible human beings? I mean, we have kids and we've got responsibilities. And therefore, I would say that a basic thing that we can all do as we enter the festive season is just plan. What is going to be waiting for me in terms of my roles and responsibilities in January? So how can I think about saving and for school fees? How could I think about already purchasing and buying for stationery? It's Black Friday is coming. So almost take care of the things that matter before you take the money and use it on the things that can actually harm you going forward. And to answer your question more directly, I would focus first on self. And that's actually a huge part. If each one of us can just focus on what are the actions and the steps I need to take in order not to compromise myself, my family, my kids, my wife, my husband, etc.
Yeah. And the difficulty around that also is, I can only imagine, for instance, a parent, and by the way, as I was saying a bit earlier on to you as well as to Dumi, it is the Christmas season. There is an expectation that there would be Christmas clothes, whether the child comes from a poor family or whether the child comes from a family that is well off. There's always that particular expectation, and perhaps not in every single family, But generally, there is that expectation of Christmas clothes will be bought and children will wear their new Christmas clothes on Christmas Day. But then you find families who unfortunately cannot afford and having to think about the priorities of, but next year you'd need to go back to school. Next year I need to make sure that you have your shoes, you have the school uniform, as well as the stationery that is required. But right now, there is a demand and an expectation on me as a parent to actually make sure that I buy my child the Christmas clothes so that he doesn't feel or she doesn't feel left out amongst the circle of their friends.
Sure. It's difficult. I completely agree. I mean, I remember growing up, and I grew up in the time and an era in Soweto where Christmas, there are Christmas clothes, New Year's, there's also new clothes for New Year's, and yet, when I think about the memories that I actually remember about that time of the year, I think about my grandmother's house, which was a 4-roomed house. I think about we had a Christmas tree, but it was actually, a peach tree, because almost every black family has a peach tree at the back of the house, or they did during that time. And we took the peach tree and took branches of it and we put it in like a little paint canister and we painted it. And I remember the 7 colors, which is obviously all the food we eat with the rice, pumpkin, spinach, and all of that. But the truth is, we didn't always have Christmas clothes and we didn't always have New Year's clothes. We had cousins in exile. And I remember a mantra from my mom who used to say, don't forget, we're sending the reason why you can't have this.
Oh, we seem to have lost Nongo there. We're going to try and bring her back. 0614-104-107. You can also drop an X at Aldrin Sampear. And our studio line is 086-000-2032. Do we have her back? Okay, Nongo, we have you back. We lost you there for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, Aldrin. I'm not sure where you lost me.
Okay, we were starting off with the issue around Amapenjis, and then you were telling us about growing up in Soweto as well. And then there is the 7 colors.
Yeah, and I guess the only point I'm trying to make is that the memories were around memories of love and goodness and kindness with the family. And often we didn't have the Christmas and the New Year's clothes. We had cousins, as an example, at the time that were in exile. And I remember my mother often reminding us that the reason we have to sacrifice is because, you have your cousins in exile, an important part of sort of the evolution of our country, and they're fighting for our freedom, etc. And so just from an emotional well-being of a child, there was a lot of pride and a lot of, sense of community and accomplishment. So it is difficult, of course, that every parent cannot get every child new clothes. But I guess for me, at the center of things is around how do we raise our kids? What kind of stories do we tell them? The feeling of love and goodness must surely surpass the feeling of having, as difficult as it is in terms of having. So that's on the one side. On the other side, I was having a conversation with my executive associate. Actually, you've spoken to Muloko just now. And I was saying, we should think about as a team, there's a lot of clothes we give away at a certain time of year. And I was saying we should think about where there are good clothes that you're giving away, how some of those things can be wrapped beautifully, especially the newer looking ones, and finding ways to get them to kids that are less fortunate during that time of year. So I think there are many ways that we can all respond to what's happening. There are ways that families can respond by not irresponsibly spending, but also finding ways to remind the children of the time is about love and goodness. And those of us who have, there are many ways that we can find families that don't have around us and bless a child with something special.
Do you think that there's an expectation on the quote-unquote rich aunt to also be sensitive of the space that she would be in with her children? Let's say, for instance, the family luncheon is happening Gakoko, Soweto, Orlando, as an example. And of course, we know that during these family meetings as well, the inequality is also laid bare. That this is what we're also dealing with, because the inequality affects us as a group within the family as well. Yeah,
I love it, Aldrin. the myriad of complexity in which we find ourselves when we live. But the truth is, can we really protect our children from that? I mean, in the instance of sort of Christmas, it happens in the festive season. It's, I guess, more front and center, but actually on a daily basis, when your child is going to school with other children that might have more and they have less. And so for me, firstly, if you are the rich aunt, it's incumbent upon you to see to what you can do, to whom much is given, much should be expected, and hopefully people have a construct of understanding. And if you're going to give your child a gift, you need to bring the gifts for the other children that will be there that might not have. But also, I think it's incumbent upon the parents to be able to instill, of those that don't have, to be able to instill still the feeling of pride and the feeling of, if you work hard, we will get there. The world is not straight and the world is not equal. So I think these things are not easy and they're not straightforward. Yeah. But I think for those of us who have, it is our absolute job and duty to find a way to give. And I loved what Dumi was saying in terms of going to hospitals and, gifting kids in hospitals who might feel isolated and left behind during that time of year. But that takes a massive amount of organization, right? It's like talking to your friends, talking to you, rapping. If all of us just did something small, as an example, I was so acutely aware of the people, that don't have homes and are at the street corners and have increased hugely since COVID. And I know some of them almost by name, etc. Something as simple as it's Christmas Day. I just stopped at a couple of robots where I knew they would be there. And I had a little parcel with a little buddy cool drink and you give it. So if all of us just found something small to do on that day, which means there are no excuses, it doesn't take a huge amount of planning, just consciousness around what can I do? It takes small acts of kindness to do something incredibly big and impactful because it becomes a collective of those small acts of kindness.
Yeah, those small acts of kindness, very important. Anonymous is joining us from KwaZulu-Natal. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Aldrin, and your guest, and everyone else, the newsreaders and everyone behind the scenes. I just want to say, Aldrin, it's a good drive that you're doing about the toy drive, you and Dumi, but if you can have a few other colleagues of yours, one can give like yogurt, little yogurts to the people in the hospital, or someone can give maybe some mashed potatoes or chips, and someone can give chips. Different people, form a group. So different people give different things. It'll be a good, nice idea. Although Aldrin, what I do every day when I'm walking along the roadside, I pick up toys that are thrown away. And I give it to the children, in the neighborhood that are poor. They're tenants, they pay rent here. So I give them, and they're so happy.
But are the toys still in good condition?
Very good condition. I wash it. Before I give it to them, I wash it and I tell them to use it. I found a mask. A mask is so good condition. And I gave it to our child and he was so happy. I said, when you're riding a bicycle, you must use this mask and also when you go to the beach so the sand doesn't hit on your face when you're going for Christmas to the beach. It works two ways. And I found a helmet and I saw a guy riding a bicycle. Every day I see this guy, the paper, he delivers paper. He is riding the bicycle. And I see him without a helmet. So I found a helmet, I washed it. I don't give it to them just like that. I'll wash it. And then I keep it. And when I see them going past, I stop them and say, hey, I scream from my balcony, hey, you, stop. And then I go out and say, I see you're not wearing a helmet. I do have a second-hand one for you. Do you want it? I ask them if they want it. Okay. I don't just give it to them just like that.
Yeah. Actually, that's so important, Nonko, and we'll address the point that Anonymous makes right there towards the end, is also the permission that is required, and also the consent that must be given from the person who you intend to be gifting, whatever you are gifting, because sometimes there is the projection that happens from the person who is gifting. But we'll have that conversation when we come back. 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
SAFM. Hello, Takoos. Hope you're well. Listen, I see Michelle's drove now you're in with such a fancy car. And then I asked her, is this your new car? She said, no. It's pre-owned and she bought it for a bargain from We Buy Cars. It's a fancy bloody ding, hoor. Apparently, they didn't trade it in her Oma's car and then they got this one. No, you must go look. Michelle says it's a dream car and she bought it for a bargain. She herself couldn't believe her eyes when she saw the price.
We Buy Cars, the best place to buy a car by far.
Second from the bottom, FC Köln confronts second from the top, Bayern München. The Billy Goats need a rapid plan to escape from the danger zone. Meanwhile, the Bavarians want to return to the summit. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch the spectacular encounter between FC Köln and Bayern München this Friday, 24 November at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
It's 24 minutes after 5 o'clock, and it is the bonding session in conversation with Nonku Pija, who is Chief Growth Officer at Discovery Health. And we're speaking about mental wellness as well as financial wellness as we head into the festive season. So, Nonku, just picking up on what Anonymous was saying there, and the other point around how sometimes as the individual who's actually gifting, there tends to be also the projection that happens and being cautious of that.
Yeah, to be honest, I have no scientific answer here, but I would say you must just lean on the side of kindness and giving. In the cases where people basically want to either reject the gift or feel a certain way about the gift, it's often rooted in something deeper. It's actually not on the surface about the gift or the person who's giving the gift. And I think that's probably 10% of the time, if not even less than that, 90% of the time where you do give, the gift is received and received well, especially if it's packaged. And when I said package, Aldrin, you raised the issue of are the toys in good condition? You know, if you're giving people goodness and they're in good condition, people will be in a good space. Can I also maybe just add?
Sure.
What is interesting for me at least, and looking at the data we get, you know, because we deal with a lot of people, especially employees in the employer space, the three top topics that we see in terms of mental well-being and emotional well-being, particularly during this time, but just across the year, are issues related to spouses and partnerships. And in fact, in South Africa, sort of January has the highest filing for divorce in our country happens during the month of January after the festive season, which shows the amount of strain that people go through, you know, in relationships for different reasons during this time. And then the second thing we see is grief and loss. And then the third is anxiety disorder. So people feeling very anxious. And I guess what I wanted to land is men don't live on bread alone, men and women, you know. We need to also think about other ways of gifting. You know, we always think about sort of the tangible material things that we can give, toys, clothes, food, etc. But during this time, think about the number of people that have gone through loss because, you know, there are people still struggling with what's happened with COVID that's in some instances had wiped out a part of the family, moms, dads, you know, sisters, brothers. There's issues of cancers and oncology. There's so many things have happened. So just look around you. You know, it's small things of kindness, noting that someone has isolated themselves, has no Christmas plans, has just popping in, just saying, do you want to join us for Christmas Day? Do you want to join us for New Year's? Might be the difference between that person, as an example, contemplating taking their lives or being in a space where they feel cared about and looked after. So I just want to say we should have a holistic view of how we support and think about people. Last thing, Aldrin, I remember we had one Christmas. I have a friend of mine. She's got a little daughter with special needs. And I remember her mom passed a while ago. And that Christmas just said, you know, I'm just going to be alone with my daughter, just the two of us. And all I had to do, it was so small. I still had my Christmas plans with my family. She didn't want to go anywhere. But I knew there was also a lot of sadness. It's just to show up. She didn't expect me to show up, just to show up, a bit of a hug, a bit like, you know, some banter, just to lift someone. And then you can still go on with like your day. So I think very critical that we need to just look around us and see people are hurting. People are being, are harmed by their own lives, by the circumstances. And an act of kindness can go a very long way.
Actually reminding me of a bonding session a couple of weeks ago with Nestam and John Gerga. And Nestam was speaking about how sometimes she is a celebrity and you know that there'll always be people around you, but sometimes there is still that sense of loneliness that you feel even though you have people around you. And I don't know how then during festive season are we able then to help people who have that sense of loneliness so that they also feel a sense of inclusivity?
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to touch on that before, without trying to make it a bit somber, but we have to be awake to the reality that during like the festive season and the happy times, those people that are in a bad space even feel worse. You know, when you see other people being happy in a bad space, you even feel worse. And there are ways in which you can overcome that. And I wanted to actually, and maybe we do it towards the end of the bonding session, but there are actual forums and platforms that people can use when they feel like they're really slipping into a bad place. As an example, there's the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, SADAG, which offers free counseling Monday to Sunday during certain hours. There's also a suicide crisis line that is available 24 hours for free. And there's also Childline. And given that the issues of suicide, unfortunately, increased significantly between December and January in particular, we should make sure that people know that they shouldn't be alone or feel completely lost and alone, you know. And when they do, that there is someone who's willing to listen 24/7 on the other side of the line.
Okay, we'll conclude the conversation when we come back after a MoneyWeb market update with Jimmy Moyaha. That is Nonkopeja, who is a Chief Growth Officer at Discovery Health. It's 5:05, time for the news headlines.
In the headlines, the Electricity Minister says the combination of a heatwave along with measures to replenish emergency reserves are behind the current unexpected demand that resulted in Stage 6 rolling blackouts. The family of Riva Steenkamp has welcomed the parole conditions imposed on her killer, Oscar Pistorius. And Israeli media is reporting that 13 women and children kidnapped by Hamas in the attack in October have now been handed over to the Red Cross. A full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And a final traffic update. Ben.
Yeah, it stays very heavy on the East Rand, Ekurhuleni side today. Big queues out to the airport. It's a breakdown on the R24, Albertina Sisulu Highway at the Barber Road exit. Bucky overturning, spilling a load of paint on the N12, Benoni bound, just by Jet Park Road. That's a heavy queue from the Edenvale exit. And at the same time, if you're driving into Joburg, there's been a crash before the Edenvale exit, and that's pushed traffic back towards Craft Road. Also, some delays on the N3, Edenvale down to Germiston. The Mike 1 is under pressure from Woodmead as you line up going south into Sandton. That's a crash just by Grayston Drive today. Durban, the N2 South has been busy all day. As we come to you live, it still is. A lot of pressure there. Just moving through Inanda Road down towards Spaghetti Junction. Northbound over Umgena Road up towards Queen Nandi Drive. Looking quite slow as well. Don't forget tonight, the R103 closed between the N3 Ashburton and Polly Shorts or Shorts Retreat. So overnight from 8 p.m, 5 a.m, you'll have to use the N3 as the alternative route. Cape Town today, fatal pedestrian crash. N1 inbound at Marine Drive. Traffic is absolutely solid right back to Century City and Canal Walk. And talking of closures, the Plattercliff Road over the N7 bridge about to be closed. 7 p.m. is the closure time. It'll stay closed right across the weekend until 5 a.m. Monday. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
In your sports this hour, let's start things off with football. Mamelodi Sundowns sporting director Fleming Berg says that the Brazilians are not resting on their laurels following unprecedented success from both male and female senior teams. Here he is speaking on Sundowns ladies winning the CAF Champions League last weekend on the back of men also clinching the inaugural African Football League.
That's the thing about being in Mamelodi Sundowns. It is that the ambition, the vision is to win everything and to become the best, team on all aspects. So that means that not only winning the Champions League for the women, which is a fantastic achievement and big congratulations, and winning the African Football League, but also being the best team in the academy sides, on the girls' academy, have the best academy in South Africa and in Africa, and eventually, in the entire world.
In rugby, the Stormers are in action today against Cardiff Rugby in the United Rugby Championship. The team has won once against Benetton with a draw on Leinster and a 2-point loss against Munster. And coach John Dobson says that the team's performance has not been ideal and they have to get better at that tactical kicking game. In the meantime, the Bulls will be without Marcel Coetzee when they go into their crucial home clash with high-flying Connacht in Pretoria tomorrow. Coetzee is suspended for the incident that saw him red-carded last week. He will also miss the following URC game, the Bulls' first big derby of the season and opening game of the South African Shield against the Sharks, as well as their opening Heineken Champions Cup clash with Saracens at Loftus. In basketball, NBA Deputy Commissioner and CEO Mark Tatum has announced that Victor Williams will step down as CEO of NBA Africa at the end of December. Williams is leaving his position to pursue other business interests, and during his tenure, Williams grew the NBA's business and presence across the continent by launching NBA Africa as a standalone entity with the support of strategic investors and partners. Then finally in motorsport, Francesco Bagnaia is on the brink of becoming just the third rider to claim back-to-back MotoGP titles, but the Italian says that there is no chance of him celebrating too soon, with everything still to play for in the final race of the weekend of the season. Now, the Ducati rider holds a 21-point lead over Jorge Martin ahead of the season finale at Valencia, where he can steal the championship as early as tomorrow by scoring at least 4 points more than Martin. Only Valentino Rossi and Marc Marquez have won consecutive titles, while Bagnaia would love to join them, and he says that his focus must be on racing. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. Don't forget to tune in to Top Sport from 7 till 8 with Michael Abramson. Other than that, from my side, Muri Mugio.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
This special acknowledgement goes to Hollywood Bets.
Your heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a thrilling experience during the Rugby World Cup France 2023.
The vibration that moved the nation.
Salute Hollywood Bets.
Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And let's see what's been happening on the markets with Jimmy Moyaha with a MoneyWeb market update. Good evening, Jimmy. Tell us what's been happening.
Good evening, Aldrin. Good evening to the listeners. It's been quite an interesting day on the markets. Equities are in the green, but the rand is not doing too well. We're getting back close to that 19 rand level. It's given back quite a bit of ground this week. I'm joined on the line by Wayne McCurry of FNB to take a look at some of the market movements. Good afternoon, Wayne. Thanks so much for the time. Second straight week of gains on the top 40, closing out in the green. That's always a good thing, but the rand has basically gone from pointing towards 18 rand to now pointing towards 19 rand again.
Yes, and there's no specific reason as to why this has happened. There wasn't any single event or any single occurrence that's caused this rand weakness. Maybe it's just the realization that, interest rates, thank goodness, are on hold in South Africa, and maybe we can't expect any rand strength until overseas banks start cutting interest rates sometime next year. But irrespective of the current valuation, the rand is extremely cheap at this level. And, if future cycles work similar to past cycles, we can expect a significantly stronger rand over the next 2 or 3 years in comparison to where it is now. But what it does in the short term, it could well go through 19. As you said, it started literally last week at 18.20, and now it's ending up close to 19.
Yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen. I mean, I wonder if some of the drivers that are driving the rand at the moment are around the fiscal conditions and the underlying things that we've needed to deal with from a current country risk premium point of view.
Yes.
It was something that the Reserve Bank governor spoke about in his meeting as well.
Yeah, no, he certainly did. Now, when you look at our fiscal government position, you must understand there's 50 billion shortfall, more or less, on tax revenues, and that's all to do with the mining companies showing significantly less profit than what they did a couple of years ago. And that's cyclical. That's not a structural issue. You know, as I said earlier on, hopefully if the cycle works into the future similarly to what it's done in the past, that tax revenue should actually come back over the next 2 or 3 years, but it doesn't help you in the shorter term when you have that actual revenue shortfall. You know, you've got to make a plan, cut expenditure, and try and keep the deficit under control. But I think a lot of the rating agencies understand that South Africa is a heavily cyclical economy, and that cycle is driven by the commodity cycle, and the value of the rand is also driven by the commodity cycle.
Hopefully that commodity cycle does start to pick up. I know we spoke about it last week to say that we could potentially be nearing the bottom of that, and hopefully as demand picks up globally, that will fuel the other areas around the economies. Wayne, I don't know if you had a look at Karoo. The share price went up 40% on Wednesday.
Ooh, yes.
And then was down today 14%. I haven't seen any SENS announcements or any news announcements around that.
There's actually no news announcement. There's no news or any other new information around Karoo. And certainly when it went up the 40%, I thought it was fat fingers. You know, someone just pushed the wrong digit and the wrong thing for that to happen. So I think it is an abnormality, that share price. It went on extremely small volumes, and the share coming back is not that unusual given as we're speaking about that 40% spike that we saw.
Maybe we'll get an update from that next week. We'll keep an eye out for that. Thanks so much, Wayne. That was Wayne McCurry of FNB giving us a sense of some of the market movements, where the rand is sitting, and as well as some of these interesting stock moves that we saw throughout the week. We're going to keep an eye on that Karoo stock. We've had a couple of questions around it. Hopefully we'll have some answers next week on our show. For now, Aldrin, we're going to cross back to you and the team. We're going to wish the SAFM listeners a pleasant weekend, and we're going to catch up next week.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend. Jimmy Moya back again next week, Monday. 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 0002032.
SAFM invites you to our inaugural public lecture, delivered by the former Chief Justice, Mogoeng Mogoeng.
When something is in the heart, you really don't need to be checking as if it was something that was designed to facilitate your appointment. One of the things that I promised the nation was to make sure that transformation happens, with a view to ensuring that work is somewhat evenly distributed among whites, black people, and both black and white women. That is the one responsibility among many that I have pursued with everything within my heart.
The lecture will take place on the 29th of November 2023 at the SABC M1 Studios in Johannesburg. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
#SAFMBTH.
We're taking your calls on 086 0002032 and your voice notes on 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear in conversation with Nonku Pija, who's the Chief Growth Officer at Discovery Health, as we look at mental wellness as well as financial wellness as we head into the festive season. Let's quickly see if we can get a call, 086 0002032, and you can drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Fancy is joining us from Polokwane. Good evening.
Good afternoon, good evening, Aldrin.
Welcome.
Thank you. Usually I only listen and never call. I thought I should call.
should have Nonku come back more often. Nonku, please, you must come back more often. We've got Fancy here who listens to the show but never calls in. But today he's decided to call in. Welcome, Fancy.
Look, man, I get the sentiments around the considerations that must be made when you are gifting, whether you are the gifter or the giftee. But I think we are complicating the whole gifting issue. I want to believe that there's no point whereby we are going to have an equilibrium in terms of the mind alignment for the person who is giving and the one who is receiving. There won't be that balance at any point. So why don't we just gift? I mean, it's an act of reaching out and touching, making someone's day a better day. It's a Merry Christmas kind of issue. Why do I have to check my conscience first whether I'm chasing after my self-satisfaction? Why should I check the next person if they'll receive the gift or not? Well, those considerations can happen, but let's just make it simple. Let's just gift. If someone wants it, they'll get it. If they don't, they may get it and dispose of it, or they may refuse it outrightly. You'd have done your part. You'd have gifted. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too, Fancy. Sarah is joining us from Soweto. Good evening.
Hi, Aldrin. How are you doing?
I'm well.
You see, I've been listening to the ladies. My sister, the holidays didn't help because we were with her all the time. Yeah, she actually took her own life on the 14th of January this year.
Sorry to hear that.
It was difficult. She was quiet. I could see that something is wrong. She was a very bubbly person. But this time I could see she's quiet. And I kept on telling her, you know what, there's wellness clinics, there's psychologists, and she said that psychologists and things like that are my bourgeois things, can take care of her problems. So I guess taking over problems was doing what she did. Christmas Day, she was there, but not her usual self, quiet. New Year's Day, she was extremely quiet. I remember we were in the kitchen washing dishes after the big lunch. She was washing, I was drying the plates. She was quite, in a sense that I couldn't say anything to her. In her mind, she knew that 14 days later, she won't be around. And her suicide letter was dated October 2022.
Sure.
So to me, she was already dead during the holidays. So nothing could have done, any gift, anything could have, saved her. Because to me, she died in October. She just took her body away in January. So, I'm just thinking a gift, or that's what the lady just said, that, a hello, a hug. I think she was way beyond a hello and a hug and a gift.
Yeah.
She was just, she was gone. We were just with her body around. So Christmas time it didn't happen.
Sure. Sarah, so I don't know if you heard what Nonku said a bit earlier on, and I'll get Nonku to respond to you as well. Earlier on when she spoke about the issue around grief, and if you had your sister around you last year during this particular time, have you processed that particular part about, like, she won't be there to help you wash the dishes? Hi, Sarah.
It's sad because she was the go-getter. She makes things happen. She makes things happen.
Yeah.
Even though she was quiet last year, she still did that. You go there, you go fetch this, you do that. But now this year, we everyone at home, we wondering how we're gonna do it. We feel like the house is empty now, like the cycle is broken.
Yeah. Sarah, thank you so much for calling in, and thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing that story with us. Really appreciate it. And it speaks to what you were touching on a bit earlier on, Nonku. Just a quick response there to Sarah as well as Fenty.
Yeah, maybe just to start with Sarah and just say, sure, Sarah, heartbreaking, so difficult, and words can't, comfort enough, when something like this happens. And I guess, it's really difficult to see when, like you say, she wrote the note in October. And what we've learned, and I guess some of the things that we have to look out for, is that people act differently when they are in a really tough place. And we've sort of learned over time in terms of the kind of emotional symptoms to look out for. You talked about the fact that she was almost reserved and isolated, which is one of the signs that things are not going well. Some people have outbursts, as an example. Some people don't want to be around other people. So I guess the quicker one sort of picks up a sign and then tries to do something about it, the better. And sometimes even when you pick up the sign and try to do something about it, as you did, it might be too late or too difficult, and it's not always a straightforward journey. And I think, Aldrin, just towards the end of the session, I'm really passionate that we give some of the lines, because perhaps if you thought something was going to happen and you were able to get hold of, let's say, the suicide crisis helpline, you might have professionals that know how to reach a person that for most of us who are not those kind of psychological professionals would not be able to reach. And maybe to just say, Sarah, I don't know where you and your family are in terms of processing the grief, but in particular on the question that Aldrin asked, which was, how do you think about this Christmas, not having her to dry the dishes for you? You are actually the ones this year that are going to be having a lot of emotional turmoil, because the things you used to do together, as you say, you're not going to be able to. So my plea is that if you want to reach out, and Aldrin, I'll make this offer. We've got teams of psychologists, and even maybe a family session might be helpful just to process and talk through, like, how do you cope at this time without a loved one who was here last year? And I'm willing to make that available.
Thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Aldrin. Then just lastly, in terms of fancy, I just want to say, I agree. You must just give and give and give. Those that receive, hallelujah. Those that don't want to receive, really, you can't kick a gift horse in its mouth, If somebody doesn't want to receive, there's nothing you can do. But let that not stop you from giving. If you have and you can give, whether it's something from the heart, like a hug, or emotional check-in, whether it's something physical that you can provide someone, a piece of bread or some food, do it, give, and not just in the festive season, all the time.
All the time. So as we conclude the conversation, Nonku, as well, just a quick reminder around what it is that you'd love the listeners to leave with this evening, and also the contact details that you were speaking about, some organizations that would be able to assist.
Great. I just want to maybe start by saying, for me, where I've gone and I've come full circle, this time of the year is going back to the basics. The issue of love, of family, of friends. I take a great pleasure, as an example, in walking barefoot in the garden, because, you're always in an office and you never get time to do things like that. Playing with your kids, playing with family, And I think the essence of what the time is about is the time of goodness. And in sharing goodness, whether it's financial or emotional, that's what it's about, less about sort of the commercial side of things. So if there's one thing I could say, is that I think we need to remember more to go back to the basics. And it brings compassion, it brings community, it brings kindness, and it brings love. Then just in terms of maybe how you think about yourself and your family during this time, just remember, January comes around really fast. So especially from a financial well-being perspective, I would just say, take a moment to plan. Take a moment to plot the good things that you're going to do and the fun you're going to have with your finances, but also plot what is going to be required, and the fact that January can be a very long month, and you don't want to be in a place where you have distress and discomfort, and you have to make excuses to kids and don't have transport money, etc. So just take a moment to plan. Doesn't take a long time, half an hour to just plan out your money and what you're going to do about it. And then finally, maybe the stuff around the emotional well-being. We underestimate the toll that the world has taken on all of us, especially in the past sort of 3 years. A lot of us are struggling with anxiety. A lot of us are struggling with depression, feeling of loneliness, isolation, hopelessness. You are not alone. A lot of us have gone through our ups and downs in terms of the journey, and a lot of us continue to. So all I want to leave with, I guess, the listeners is just around there is help. When you just pick up the phone, and most of this help comes at almost very little money. It really takes the willingness to say, I want to reach out. And if you allow me, Aldrin, I would like to sort of leave 3 numbers. The first one is what they call SADAG, South African Depression and Anxiety Group. They have their number is 011-234-4837. And I hope you can publish these numbers. And then if you really feel very hopeless, there's a suicide crisis helpline, which is available 24 hours a day. And it's a toll-free number. So the call is in essence for free, 0800-567-567. And then finally, a lot of our children go through a very difficult time with violence during holidays. There's alcohol abuse that affects children. There's a helpline. You don't have to be the child, or you don't have to be the direct parent of a child. You can be an observer that sees that something is not going right. You can do something about it. And so there's a child helpline that's available and also accessible 24 hours a day. We'll make all of those numbers available.
Yeah. Thank you once again, Nonku, for coming on and being part of the bonding session this afternoon. Really appreciate your time. And all the best with the new job.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
Thank you so much. That's Nonku Picha, who is Chief Growth Officer at Discovery Health. 0614-104107, and you can drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Score big with Diadora South Africa, and your soccer team could soon face your opponents in Diadora gear. Show off your love for the game and gear up for victory. Join the competition now for a chance to win a full soccer team kit, a goalkeeper kit, and accessories. All you have to do is follow at Diadora.South-Africa on Instagram. Tag your team and teammates in the comment section of our posts. The competition closes on the 30th of November at 2 p.m. T's and C's apply.
Hashtag we love it here.
This great initiative is supported by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
Well, we've come to the end of our voyage. Thank you so much for choosing Flight SAFM BTH 3 to 6 with me, Aldrin Sampear. Today we're playing out with Bongi Dube Ngifuna Wena, and our parting shot is from Kerry Washington, who once said, "You and you alone are the only person that can live the life that writes the story that you were meant to tell. And the world needs your story because the world needs your voice." And Theo is reading our credits this evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to BTH. Behind the mic, you have Aldrin Sampear, our captain. Our co-host, Nonku, Tumi, and the sport desk, production team, Temba, Kanya, Tusani, Tumelo, and Lundi. Our plane going to land safely. Remember to love one another. Thank you. It's you in Cape Town. Thank you.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
And remember to love each other and lead with compassion. Dotsins, enjoy the rest of your evening and have a beautiful weekend.